Very excited to have you here, Sunil. Thanks so much for joining us. This was supposed to be hosted by Anna, who's the CEO and founder of Perena, but unfortunately her flight got delayed. So I'll be hosting you, and I'm really happy about it. So just like Shiraz was saying, right, like Fiserv is a new entrant, but actually a behemoth. So we talk about new entrants in the blockchain, but the reality is Fiserv is one of the most important payments company in the world. It's if I'm not wrong, $100 billion public company with over $20 billion in revenues, half of them from payment processing and the other half from infrastructure provision, to I think over 15,000 financial institutions in the world. So that's nothing but a newcomer. Yeah. But we're really, really excited to see how basically you're entering the space now, and specifically through the embedded finance angle. The recent acquisition of PayFi, right, which is a basically payment company that focuses on the gig economy payout, is a big push in embedded finance. So that's going to be part of what we want to discuss today, is how you're thinking about the PayFi infrastructure and on-chain toolkit with what you already have, which is a very successful company in the payment and traditional payment space. So get us started. What does Fiserv do, and what is the role of embedded finance in basically Fiserv's strategy?
Great. Thank you for having me here. It was great listening to the speakers ahead of me. I think the themes are pretty consistent in terms of our interest in what we're looking in the DeFi space. As you mentioned, that we are not a newcomer. We're a 40-year-old company. We're privileged to move billions of dollars every day around the world, along with data. So our goal is to basically provide the widest level of choice to the financial institutions and merchants we serve around the world by giving them an opportunity to get paid or pay the way they want to. And whether that is leveraging fiat currency or digital currency, stable coin, deposit receipt, those are the things that we care about. We care about providing the largest amount of choice to all of our customers on our ecosystem to ensure that we can move and exchange value in a regulatory compliant way. We're super excited about the work that Solana Foundation is doing, as well as the PayFi team, because we see blockchain as the future rail, right? In terms of being able to leverage speed, cost, programmability. Those are key variables or attributes for any successful payment rail. And given the amount of value that we move across domestic as well as international rails, it's going to be a great opportunity for us to help the community we serve get introduced to modern finance. Mm-hmm. In terms of embedded finance, what we are noticing is that over the last couple of years, more and more brands and merchants are starting to take ownership of different types of financial service use cases and embedding them into commerce journeys. They're doing this because they feel that they can enhance the commerce journey by providing credit, by providing foreign exchange services, by providing payout or pay-in capability to their businesses or retail customers. Mm-hmm. And as they take more of the lead in embedding financial services, there is a larger gap between them and the sponsor financial institution that works behind them to ensure that what they're doing is done in a regulatory compliant way. So for us, when we think about modern finance, when we think about embedded finance, we're thinking about ways to provide our endpoints, which are merchants and businesses, to give them all of the capabilities they need so they can provide the largest amount of choice to their customers, whether that's in fiat or TradFi services or DeFi services. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And I think to your point, like having embedded finance rely on the infrastructure of such large companies gives reach. Part of embedded finance is a new distribution system, right, for financial services. Yep. And so one of the questions we're asking ourselves is, traditional embedded finance that we've seen over the past 10 years, I'd say, has been providing credit cards or maybe buy now, pay later solutions, credit solutions at the endpoint in a non-financial experience or like customer journey. And I want to ask you, what does that look like when you add on top an infrastructure that is blockchain based? What is the experience looking like if you can kind of like embed?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think
tools?
it's a great comment, and kind of echoing what Shiraz and others have talked about in terms of kind of the last mile, right? What's happening there. And we feel like we're very well positioned to enable last mile use cases. So I'll give you a couple of them, right? We work with a number of gig economy companies, and they pay out at a task level for any of the drivers or any of the folks that work off their application. And some of these folks are comfortable receiving payouts in fiat, but some of them may want to receive stablecoin because it allows them to immediately then take those percentage of payouts and be able to use it to either buy crypto or be able to send a remittance payment back home. Mm-hmm. Right? So by being able to give that optionality within the gig app that says, get paid the way you want to get paid, whether it's fiat or stable or any other asset, we feel like we're helping the gig economy platform engender loyalty for those end users that will continue to work on their platform, because the gig platforms are looking for productivity, right? So that's use case one. Let's go to use case number two. We serve and process payments for some of the largest marketplaces around the world, right? And when you look at these marketplaces, they usually have sellers that are selling in different countries on their platform. And the biggest pain point they have is how to get settled cash, right? How to get that payout without having to open up multiple financial institution bank accounts in different countries around the world. One way you can do that is you create a centralized stablecoin account where they can get paid out. And then eventually, whether they want to settle in native currency in X market, or if they want to keep it in stablecoin because the currency or market they live in, there's a lot of volatility and they want to earn some yield, they have all that choice, right? So gig economy, retail, marketplace, B2B for the sellers. I think there's lots of these use cases out there where if we are able to provide choice to customers, we think many of them will start to appreciate why stablecoin payout is preferential. So when you go back to the big numbers that you talked about at the beginning, right? We settle more than $10 billion a day, right, across all the different nodes in our network, more than, I think, close to 4 trillion a year. And when you think about that type of numbers and you say, okay, even 5 or 10% of that gets settled in stablecoin. Think about the liquidity that we can bring to the network. Think about kind of the use cases, the efficiency, the cost savings that we could have. And then when you think about the different constituents that we serve, financial institutions and merchants, then you start thinking about what other things that, as Lily was talking about, we can create. Simple pay-in payouts is probably step one. Then you think about all of the different financial products that we have from an application perspective that could be enhanced leveraging that next layer or the next rail.
And when you talk about these different steps of evolution, I wonder, do you think of stablecoin innovation as like an incremental change or a foundational shift?
My personal opinion is that it's a foundational shift, and I'm super excited. I know the team that we have working at Fiserv looking at this, every day comes up with great features and use cases where we can build upon the TradFi applications we have all across the firm. So for us, it's a foundational shift. And that becomes a little bit scary at the same time, because I think the TradFi model has been well established. The incentives and the commercial model has been well established. Now, when you start going into modern finance or DeFi, I think you have to look at not only the regulatory component, but what are the commercial incentives for everybody on the ecosystem? Because the goods are still exchanged. Right? Now you're just getting, faster payment or a different type of payment. So what are the incentives for all of those payments, and what are the incentives for the parties that are providing the on-ramps and the off-ramps for those payment rails? So there's still a lot to be kind of worked through, but the underlying system is what gives us a lot of excitement in terms of the capability it has.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said about how dizzying it can be to think about such a foundational change. And like the traditional financial industry is regulated, but for good reasons.
Yep.
And there are lots of things in compliance to be, taken care of. I think you're in a privileged position. You talk to a lot of banks.
Yep.
And so you sit at this nexus of the banks and then the fintechs and the merchants. And so I'm wondering as well, talking to all of these entities that are at the center of global commerce, what are the product conversations that you see emerging? Are people talking about tokenized deposits? Is it about programmable money? Is it mostly about settlement time? What are some of the themes that are emerging?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think depending on who you're speaking with, and we are in the middle of a lot of those conversations. When we talk to the banks, they're obviously talking about stablecoin versus DDRs, right? And saying, hey, how do I, live given the balance sheet treatment for stablecoins versus demand deposits or tokenized deposits? So those are questions. Those are real questions, and those are questions that we're starting to answer right now. When we talk to fintech companies, they're obviously talking about, hey, how do I unlock more revenue with payments? Because a lot of these fintech companies are in a very competitive peer set. And a lot of the base services they offer have very thin margins. And many of them look at financial services as a way to increase their margin. Now, when you look at financial services to increase the margin and then you start talking about DeFi, it becomes quite interesting, right? So what type of business model as a fintech do you want to establish and move forward? And when you talk to issuers of credit cards and debit cards, I think the networks are doing everything they can to kind of assimilate what they have from a traditional FI perspective and be able to support DeFi use cases. But that also is going through a learning curve as well, because the economics in the networks is what gives us that 1% to 3% today, right? And then how do you break that down? And is there enough incentive for all parties to do X, Y, Z that is needed to ensure that there's trust in the system? Because I think that's one of the pieces that folks probably undervalue, is that the TradFi has been successful and continues to be successful because it has, half a century of enabling trust with rules and regulations. As we think about DeFi, how do we kind of, overcome that? Or how do we establish that same level of trust going forward?
That's so fundamental. If we want to really have this technology reach the bigger kind of like scale that we want it to have and have all of this impact that you just mentioned, we need to make sure that it is trustworthy. And when we look at some of the, let's say, hacks and accidents that still happen today, we know that there is still a long way. Although I think when I'm listening to you, I get really, really excited. I think there is a lot of gain to be had for a lot of different parties in these ecosystems, including the banks, the fintechs, the merchants. So it's for us to get to work and to build this. Looking forward or kind of like looking ahead, if you think about the next 3 to 5 years, how do you think embedded finance will look? And what would you like Fiserv's role to be in this whole new stack?
Yeah, look, I think places where you will originate financial transaction activity, the way you will settle financial transactions will completely change over the next 3 to 5 years. It will become less of a bank-centric model and start looking at areas of commerce where people will trust brands and be able to say, hey, I'm willing to do XYZ transaction there. So I think we're starting to see that the train has left the station. One of the things that'll be interesting over the next 5 years is when you look at either the cash till of a merchant, or you look at the wallet of a customer, and you see what is that mix change going to be from 100% fiat. Is it going to go 50-50 between digital asset and fiat going forward? Are people going to, accept digital assets as a tender type that permeates all these different use cases that we've talked about. I mean, that's the exciting part. For us, I think we in the US, for example, 60% of the ACH goes through Fiserv rails, 40% of the credit card transactions we process in the US. So we're excited about just enabling greater access to these endpoints, these trusted endpoints on our network. And if those trusted endpoints need now to accept a different form of value, we're looking forward to kind of building that out.
Wow, that's again extremely exciting. I also think about how the internet is going to change as a whole, and where a lot of that commerce is going to happen. And so, to your point, like financial experiences embedded into the overall new internet, and where these experiences can be kind of like a new innovation, where people get exactly what they need when they need it. I feel like there is a lot for Fiserv to kind of like help with and support customers, support merchants, etc. So
and we haven't even touched on the programmability piece. Right? That's what you're kind of hitting on, is that the opportunity there to basically say, why do you need a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage? Why can't the mortgage be tailored for your specific kind of financial story, right? And I think we see a lot of opportunity in those banking applications that we support on our traditional FI systems today. And we say, what can we do on the mortgage side? What can we do with CDs? What can we do with demand deposits? How do we change this to kind of fit and get tailored into the cash flow experience of every individual or every business? Because I think, again, as Lily, Shiraz, and other speakers have talked about, is why do we have one broad definition that everybody needs to fit into, when we could have an opportunity to tailor financial services to the cash flow needs of the lowest common denominator, right? Which is the individual or the business. So that's the piece that's exciting. But to kind of build all that out, have the rules, have the ability to ensure the trust, I think that's kind of the journey that we're all on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exciting. I think, to your point, programmability is the Pandora's box. When we think about the amount of data that exists on the internet, if we can leverage that and then use programmability, or really software, money as a software, to kind of like bring the right services and the right financial experiences to customers, I think we're really having a very, very big breakthrough. That's exciting. Okay, to like close this out, I'd love to do a little lightning round with you. So I'll ask you questions and you'll just come up with, like a short answer that just comes to mind. So the first one, in your mind, what's the biggest near-term opportunity in embedded finance?
I would say enabling faster pay-ins and payouts.
Okay. Very clear. What is in your mind the most overrated stablecoin use case today?
I'm going to say FX, because I just read about it everywhere. I'm sure there's a base there in terms of commercial need for it, but it just feels like it's everywhere. Like that's how, at least in my world, stablecoins have defined their relevance.
Okay, that's a good one. And then if you had to choose one word to describe the future of the financial infrastructure?
Freedom.
Ooh, good. I love that. That resonates a lot.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think choice, tailored financial services is I think, definitely here, and looking forward to see how we can leverage Solana and other chains to kind of push that story forward.
Amazing. Sunil, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for sharing all these insights.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.